conclusions. So, why does bone health matter? I want to read a quote to you first of all. It says, "You don't fracture a hip because your bones are weak. You fracture a hip because you fall, and you fall because your muscles are weak. Your balance is compromised, and your lifestyle is not protecting you." So, as much as your bones matter, so do your muscles, and so does your balance when it comes to preventing fractures. And bone health, it often goes unnoticed until a fracture occurs, and by then it is sometimes too late. I know that doctors, I don't think they even really test bone density until we are over the age of 65. But by that time, you may have wasted years of actively building more bone. I think the recommendation is that women aged 65 and older should get a baseline DEXA scan. So your bone density is measured with a DEXA scan, and your result is given as a T-score. So if your T-score is -1 or higher, then your bone density is considered normal. If it's between -1 and -2.5, that would indicate osteopenia, stage of bone loss before osteoporosis. And then a T-score of -2.5 or lower is a diagnosis of osteoporosis, which is a silent disease, but it can have serious consequences. According to an osteoporosis study, the lifetime fracture risk for women over 60 is 44%, and for men, 25%. So it's nearly 50% for women, 1 in 2. The National Osteoporosis Foundation estimates that 50% of women and 25% of men over 50 will have an osteoporosis-related fracture during their lifetime. And if you have osteoporosis, then that risk increases to 65% in women and 42% in men. And fracture can be very serious as we age because hip fractures can lead to hospital stays, immobility, blood clots, infections, and sadly, sometimes a permanent loss of independence. And so we need to look at what are some of the modifiable risk factors that we can work on. Number one is low fitness and weak muscles. We can do something about that. Number two is poor balance. We can do something about that. Number three, low intake of calcium, vitamin D, and vitamin K. Then number four, inadequate protein, smoking and alcohol. And then the last one I'm mentioning is calorie restriction. So prolonged or extreme calorie restriction can negatively affect bone health, particularly if it leads to nutrient deficiencies or loss of lean muscle mass. I'm going to take a little sidestep here because when it comes to calorie counting, I mean, it's so old school and who wants to be bothered with that? But because of the effect of extreme calorie restriction negatively affecting bone, I want to just say something about it here for those who are looking to lose weight. And I know some of you are because you contact Chrysalis Networks. So as boring as calorie talk is, it can actually matter. And obviously, I would hate anyone to obsess with calories. We don't have time for that. But I want to introduce you to just a little bit of information about calorie restriction if you need to lose weight and you want to do it safely, then it can be done. But I'm in no way referring to going on to some stupid 1,200 calorie diet or something. I mean, my calories are generally 2,000 or more a day, and I only know that because I wanted to assess my protein intake to see that I was hitting protein targets. because protein is also important to bone health, but more on protein next time. But when it comes to calorie restriction, mild, moderate, small calorie restriction, it can have some incredible health promoting effects. I don't do it, but I'm just sharing the science. So there was a randomized controlled trial. It was called the calorie trial. Calorie standing for Comprehensive Assessment of the Long-Term Effects of Reducing Intake of Energy, published in 2016. It was done in 2 phases, with phase 2 being the most comprehensive randomized control trial on long-term calorie restriction in humans. So we're not talking animal studies. And it was this mild calorie restriction. And it actually led to some very positive changes, meaningful changes in biological markers of aging and disease risk. But there was a small loss of bone mineral density at the spine and hip over the period of 2 years. It was small, but there was a small loss of bone mineral density. But the interesting thing is the participants in this trial, they were not doing resistance exercise, which is crucial for bone health. We're getting there, the exercise part, but these participants were not required to exercise, and no specific physical activity program was provided. They were encouraged to just maintain their usual activity levels, and this was intentional because the researchers wanted to isolate the effects of calorie restriction alone on age-related biomarkers without exercise as a confounding factor. Now, because weight bearing and resistance exercise is critical for preserving bone mass, this very modest loss, bone loss observed in the calorie trial may have been avoided if resistance training had been included. Because in other studies, they show that combining calorie restriction with resistance training helps to preserve or even improve bone mass and muscle mass. So there was a systemic review and meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials that compared calorie restriction alone versus calorie restriction with exercise. And the aim was to evaluate the difference in bone mass between the 2 groups. And the conclusion was that the study suggests that physical training can preserve and even significantly increase the bone mass of the hip and femoral neck during weight reduction. So the summary of the evidence is this: exercise during weight loss, especially resistance training, weight-bearing training, can preserve or even improve bone density at key sites like the hip and femoral neck. Weight loss by calorie restriction alone often leads to bone loss, placing individuals, especially older adults, at the risk of fracture. So, summary is, if you, for health reasons, need to lose weight, then to protect your bone health during a period of calorie restriction, it is vital to optimize your nutrients, adequate calcium, vitamin D, protein, magnesium, vitamin K, add resistance training, and avoid any excessive restriction. Very moderate caloric restriction, I think 10 to 14%, has been shown to enhance lifespan. In longevity research over many years, it's been learned from studies on many types of animals that moderate caloric restriction without any malnutrition prolongs lifespan. slows biological aging, delays the development of chronic disease. And in a more recent study in humans, it was shown to improve immune function and T cell production, reduce inflammation in participants who reduced their calories by approximately 14%. So, a mild calorie restriction actually slows the metabolic rate slightly, and in that way, you slow the rate at which you age. And the best way to actually increase your metabolism in a healthy way is to increase muscle. Because when musculoskeletal metabolism increases, this increases your muscles needs, which is a form of metabolism, increases your caloric needs. So this is the science of it. In summary, moderate caloric restriction, which must be in an environment of micronutrient excellence, along with comprehensive nutritional adequacy and exercise, can be health promoting, can be good for bone, and under-eating otherwise without exercise and attention to nutritional needs is going to be detrimental to bone health. So eat well, lots of nourishing foods, and avoid the highly processed, sugar-laden, calorie-dense foods. And it's actually been shown in research that when your cells are satisfied with nutrient-dense, nourishing foods, that cravings for junk food actually lessens. So, if a person just one last thing on this. If a person just calorie restricts and does nothing else, around 25 to 50% of their weight loss may actually come from lean mass, mostly muscle. So if one needs to lose weight, then preserving muscle matters far more than hitting any number on the scale. You don't want to lose muscle mass because losing muscle mass is metabolically unhealthy. Muscle is a glucose sink. When we eat and sugar is circulating about in our bodies, it is taken up by our muscle. And building muscle mass through strength training can significantly improve insulin resistance because muscle tissue is a major player in glucose uptake and metabolism. And increased muscle mass enhances insulin sensitivity, allowing the body to use glucose more effectively and potentially lowering blood sugar levels. So I mentioned there that if one goes on some ridiculous diet, that can lose 25 to 50% of the weight as lean mass. And studies show that as much as 80% or more of the regained weight will be body fat. So there are multiple studies that support this dynamic, that muscle is lost during dieting and fat is regained disproportionately if exercise is not included. So muscle matters. It matters for your bones and it matters for your metabolic health. Matters for your brain as well, but that's another subject. So when it comes to AIM's healthy cell concept, they are the 6 pillars of lifestyle to improve your health. And 2 of them are nutrition and exercise. So I want to dive a little deeper into the types of exercise that help with bone health. And then I'm going to move on to the nutrition component, digging into calcium and the amazing CalciAIM supplement. And then in another session, we'll discuss the importance of protein and ProPs, as well as anti-inflammatory nutrition and barley life. So as an introduction to these types of exercise, Dr. Peter Attia, who is a longevity expert, says this: the bones are sensory entities that remodel in proportion to how much mechanical stress they are under. So, lifting heavy stuff matters. And Dr. Joel Furman says that weight-bearing exercise combined with a nutrient-dense diet is the most reliable way to increase your bone strength and maintain your bone health throughout our lives. So there is hope. Osteoporosis cannot always be fully reversed, but its progression can be slowed, halted, and even partially improved when you combine a nutrient-dense diet with the right type of exercise and your vitamin D sufficiency as well as calcium and protein. So, as I was saying, doctors don't usually prescribe a DEXA scan until you're over 65, but I recently did one at age 54. And I requested it from my doctor because I want to know what my bone density is so that I've got a baseline to watch. And there's a great saying I love. It's this: test, don't guess. And even better than just a bone density scan, you can ask for a full body composition scan. And I mean, this is even better because it tells you your muscle mass, your visceral fat levels, and this has absolutely nothing to do with vanity because visceral fat is that deep belly fat that surrounds your internal organs, including your liver and your pancreas, and unlike subcutaneous fat that you can pinch under your skin, visceral fat is hidden and it can be dangerous to your health. It's metabolically active, it produces inflammatory cytokines, it can increase systemic inflammation, the risk of heart disease, it can contribute to insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, and it may even contribute to bone loss via chronic inflammation. So when it comes to your bones, I say test, don't guess. I think my GP thinks I'm half mad because since around the age of 50, every year around the time of my birthday, I email her and I ask her for a host of blood tests because I want to know how my metabolic health is, including my insulin levels. I want to know my lipid profile, including ApoB. I want to know my CRP, so I know how my inflammation levels are. Homocysteine is another excellent marker to check. It's a risk factor for heart disease and cognitive decline. And in preparation for this presentation, I actually found out that elevated homocysteine levels interfere with collagen cross-linking, weakening bone structure, and it's linked to increased fracture risk, particularly in older adults. So I don't know if you know anything about homocysteine, but it's an amino acid that forms in the body as a byproduct of digesting methionine, which is an amino acid found in protein-rich foods, and it's generally higher in animal-based foods. So under normal circumstances, homocysteine is broken down and converted into other substances that your body needs. And it does this using B vitamins, especially B6, B12, and then folate as well. And this study concluded that increased homocysteine levels appear to be a strong and independent risk factor for osteoporotic fracture in older men and women. So if you're wanting to lower homocysteine, get enough B vitamins, drink your peak endurance, get enough folate, drink your barley life, and limit methionine-rich sources of protein. Unfortunately, ProPeas is has a low level of methionine in it. Okay, so back to the basics with the exercise. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this presentation, I would hope that it would be this: bone and muscle grow together in tandem. The mechanical forces that are produced by exercise, they stimulate activity in the bone building osteoblasts. And this leads to denser, stronger bones and not just stronger muscle. So I'm going to mention two studies. The one was a meta-analysis to study the effects of combined exercise modalities on bone mineral density in post-menopausal women in the journal Osteoporosis International. The conclusion was that combined resistance training and weight-bearing exercises significantly increased lumbar spine and femoral neck bone mineral density. Resistance training alone did not have this significant effect. I'll get into that now a little bit deeper. And the second study was a randomized controlled trial to study the effects of high impact exercise and resistance training in bone mineral density in early postmenopausal women in the journal Archives of Osteoporosis. And it showed that women performing high impact and resistance training preserved or slightly increased bone mineral density at the hip and spine, and the control group lost bone mineral density. So let me say it again: muscle and bone grow together in tandem. So you can't strengthen one without supporting the other. And sarcopenia is the gradual loss of muscle mass and strength and function with age. Unless we are fighting it, it's going to happen. It typically begins in our 30s and then it accelerates after age 60. And from our 30s, it progresses at a rate of 3 to 5% loss of muscle per decade. And then the rate can accelerate after the age of 60, with some individuals losing about 1% of their muscle mass per year. And loss of muscle with age is linked directly to increased fall and increased fracture risk. So let's look at the types of exercise that help build bone based on those studies. Number one is resistance training. So resistance exercises involve working against an external force, like lifting weights or resistance bands, or even your own body weight, doing push-ups or squats. And then weight-bearing exercises are walking, jogging, dancing, stair climbing, jumping. They are activities where your body works against gravity. And this stimulates bone through ground reaction forces. So the studies we saw show that the best strategy is actually a combination of both those forms of exercise, because then you're targeting bones from the muscle pull as well as ground impact. And you're stimulating more bone sites, spine, hips, arms, etc. And you're improving balance, posture, and fall prevention. So, for example, it would be like doing squats as well as jumping. I want to just tell you something about jumping through a quote by Dr. Vonda Wright, who is an orthopedic surgeon, and she's a bone health specialist. And she says, jumping is one of the best exercises that you can do for your bones. Um, every time your foot strikes the ground, it sends an impact signal through your skeleton that tells your bones to get stronger. And it doesn't even take hours of jumping. Just a few minutes a day of impact and resistance can make all the difference. So, if you are able, then don't neglect jumping. It's one of the best exercises that you can do for your bones because this impact signals your bone to reinforce bone density. Now, don't just get up and jump. You can injure yourself if you've got poor form or weak joints. So don't just start jumping without warming up or guidance if necessary. Because jumping is a high impact exercise. It refers to physical activities where your high impact exercises refer to physical activities where your feet leave the ground and land again with a forceful contact, causing a jolt or impact through your bones and joints. And this type of exercises places more mechanical load on your skeleton, which is why it's especially beneficial for bone density. It's not for everyone. It might be too risky if you already have osteoporosis or osteopenia. If you have joint issues or if you have balance problems or high fracture risk. So it's in those cases, then low impact options like walking and strength training are better alternatives. But I jump every morning, first thing, and get it behind me. Um, 30 hops on one foot, 30 on the other. And then I do side to side jumps to work on balance as well. So as you move from side to side and stop yourself on one foot, then that helps with your balance. Working on balance is important. And I mean, there's lots of things you could do. You could just, if you're talking on the phone, you can just put your one foot on your knee, talk like this, balancing. On the other leg, brush your teeth while you're standing on one foot. These things all are easy things to do to help improve balance. One other thing that's been proven on DEXA scans to actually improve bone density is using a power plate. It's one of those vibrating machines. You might have seen them at the gyms, and it's a great option if a person is weak and they need a gentle way to start building up strength without using heavy weight. So it puts minimum strain on the joints. It helps the body regenerate muscle, bone, and even cartilage, and stimulates the osteoblasts to build bone and collagen formation. And it's also brilliant for circulation and removing lactic acid. So, wrapping up the exercise component, the studies are saying through meta-analyses that combined resistance training with weight-bearing exercise can increase bone density, especially in the spine and hips. I'm done with exercise. Let's move on to nutrition, focusing on calcium and the incredible CalciAIM supplement. Now, we all know calcium is vital for bones. There are other essential bone nutrients as well, like vitamin D, magnesium, potassium, vitamin K1, and K2. Vitamin K helps shuttle the calcium to the bones where we actually want it, and helps bind calcium to the bone matrix. There are supplementation trials using vitamin K2 supplementation in postmenopausal women, and these have shown substantial reductions in fracture risk. So vitamin K2 is not easily obtained from plant foods. So for those on a plant-based diet. But an interesting thing I learned while preparing for this presentation is that it seems that people who are eating a lot of K1, which is found in green vegetables and in barley life, if you're getting in your K1 and you have a healthy gut from a diet of nutritional diversity, so and you've got healthy bacteria in the gut, then it seems that a healthy gut can convert vitamin K1 to K2. But so that's if you're eating super healthy. It's much like vitamin B12. Your gut can make it if you have a super healthy gut, but not everyone is in that position after years of maybe abusing their bodies. So once again, my favorite saying is test, don't guess, especially when it comes to vitamin B12. Um, the best way to actually measure your vitamin B12 is through doing a MMA test, that's testing for methylmalonic acid, or measuring homocysteine levels, because both of these rise if your active B12 is low. So serum blood is not very active, it's not very accurate of active B12 status. And it can appear normal even if a deficiency exists. So elevated MMA is a strong indicator of functional B12 deficiency, even if serum B12 is normal. And then with regards to testing of vitamin K2 status, it's not routine, it's very costly, it's apparently technically difficult, it's expensive to detect it levels accurately. It requires specialized labs using fancy equipment to test for K2. But it is linked to healthier bones. And so it's something to be aware of, and maybe safer to have a little in supplement form. My general multivitamin that I take does include a little K2, and I do that for safety. It's found in a lot of fermented foods, fermented soybean foods, and animal foods. But back to calcium. High dose calcium supplementation is not necessary to protect bones, and it can even be harmful. It spikes too much calcium in the blood. And so, when it comes to calcium, a cautious and conservative approach is best, with the focus being on getting a lot of your calcium from food and then small supplemental doses if needed. There are some studies that show health risks with high dose calcium supplementation, and some don't. So there's enough evidence to be cautious about high dose, but there's not enough to be certain that high dose calcium supplements are dangerous. So, how can we be cautious? It's better to take a lower dose supplement. Absorption is best when it's less than 500 milligrams per serving. It's also best to be spaced throughout the day. So CalciAIM, for example, contains 386 milligrams per scoop. So that's under your 500 milligrams, and then you can read on the container, it tells you according to your age group whether you need 1, 2, or 3 scoops a day. But now, what makes CalciAIM so amazing as a calcium supplement? So it contains calcium, but it also contains some of the complementary nutrients needed for bone health, including vitamin D. It's a natural source of vitamin D from plants. It gives you 300 international units per scoop. It contains magnesium. It contains zinc, which is important for calcium absorption. It contains copper, which is an essential micronutrient and plays a role in the formation of bones. It contains vitamin C. Um, when vitamin C is paired with L-lysine, this vitamin can improve and improve the development of and maintenance of cartilage. And CalciAIM contains L-lysine, an essential amino acid that we need to get from our diets or supplementation, and it enhances the absorption of calcium into the bloodstream and limits its excretion in the urine. So I recently wrote a blog post titled "Are Your Bones Ready for the Next Decade?" And that's where I discussed and found all this interesting information on CalciAIM as a game changer for bone health. Because it's an essential nutrient and the body cannot make it on its own, it has to be consumed through food and supplements. And CalciAIM was launched in 2008, and it was developed to offer an advanced bioavailable calcium supplement that goes far beyond your typical tablets or capsules. CalciAIM is a powdered citrus drink that contains 3 forms of calcium. And what truly sets CalciAIM apart is how it delivers these forms of calcium and the other nutrients. This lies in the power of the powder. The formulation was carefully designed for maximum absorption, and with many supplements that come in tablets or capsules, CalciAIM was made as a powder that you mix with water. And it's this delivery system that plays a vital role in how well the body absorbs these nutrients. And here's why this matters, because according to the physician's desk reference, the average person only absorbs 20% of calcium from tablets and 30% of calcium from capsules. In contrast, CalciAIM, this powdered citrus drink, can provide up to 98% of bioavailable ionic calcium. So that's a remarkable difference. So we've got this calcium lactate, calcium gluconate, and calcium carbonate in the drink. And the secret here lies in the chemistry. And the secret is the slight acidity of the drink. So when you mix your CalciAIM with water, something important happens. A chemical reaction takes place. And this starts breaking down the mineral bonds before you even drink it. The drink's pH is about 4 to 4.2, making it slightly acidic. This breaks down the bonds between calcium and the companion compounds like the lactate, the gluconate, the carbonate, and converts them into ionic calcium, the absorbable form of calcium that your body can actually use. And this matters even more as we age, because a healthy digestive system in our youth produces strong stomach acid that can naturally break these bonds down. But with age, our digestion can weaken and absorption can become less efficient. So by creating this reaction in the glass, CalciAIM is doing some of the digestive work for you, and also making the other minerals like magnesium, copper, and zinc easier to absorb as well. I don't know if you've ever noticed when mixing your CalciAIM that they're tiny bubbles that might rise to the surface. And that's the carbon dioxide being released. And that's a sign that the bonds are breaking and that the nutrients are becoming bioavailable. I actually messaged Phil at the head office to ask if it has to be mixed with water, or can one mix it with other liquids? And he said the reaction still occurs if you add it to smoothies or plant milks, as they contain water. But I just wanted to ask because my favorite ways to take CalciAIM are by making a smoothie bowl with it in, or I love an afternoon drink where I mix a plant milk, some Propeas, and some CalciAIM with some ice. It's so yummy and so refreshing. When it comes to my smoothie bowl, I like to blend up about 150 grams of mixed berries, add 1.5 scoops of Propeas, scoop of CalciAIM, some fit and fiber, some ready beets, and a cup of soya milk. And I asked AI to analyze the calcium content in the smoothie bowl. And the reply was that it provides a substantial amount of calcium, covering 60 to 70% of the RDA for most adults in just one meal. A smoothie bowl like that also gives one around 35 grams of protein, which is a great target for meals if you are wanting to reach protein targets over the day. So maybe some of you are going, eek, or maybe your jaw dropped. This is an area where I've changed my views. Remember, I said to be skeptical, even of one's own biases. So maybe your thoughts there were soya milk, thyroid, or oh dear, soy, breast cancer. So I'm going to sidestep here for a second. I'm not an expert, but I just wanted to explain how I understand things at this point. I mean, soy foods have long been recognized for their high protein content and their low saturated fat content. But concerns have been raised because of the soy phytoestrogens. But looking at the science as I read it, for healthy people, healthy people, the evidence suggests that regular soy consumption is absolutely fine, and it's only problematic in the context of an iodine deficiency, which can be a concern for those who follow plant-based diets, who may have low iodine intake without supplementation. So that's something to be aware of. But fortunately, there is kelp in barley life, which contains iodine. But the current scientific consensus is that soy is safe in people with normal thyroid function, and soy does not cause thyroid disease and does not impair thyroid function. I know there are some doctors who are very cautious about soy consumption for people who do have thyroid conditions or autoimmune disease or hormonal imbalances. So I think this is a personal decision, but multiple randomized controlled trials and meta-analyses have shown no significant impact on TSH, free T4, or T3 in healthy adults consuming soy. So they say that soy contains compounds that can interfere with thyroid hormone production if iodine intake is low. But in countries with adequate iodine levels, soy doesn't pose a problem. In iodine deficient individuals, then high soy intake may mildly suppress thyroid function. So those diagnosed with hypothyroidism may require a dosage adjustment to their thyroid medication to accommodate high soy intake, because it may decrease the absorption of the medication. But apparently it doesn't mean you have to avoid soy, but timing matters if you're on thyroid medication. But that's not my area. So one can look into that. If you eat soy, then focus on whole soy, like or minimally processed soy, like tofu, tempeh, soy milk, and not ultra processed soy, like you find in soy burgers or soy sausages. Um, if you eat soy, then ensure you have adequate iodine intake. You can get it, as I said, from kelp in barley life. For me, I don't like to over supplement because I believe that nutrients work together in balance. And that's why I love barley life so much, because isolating and overdosing on one vitamin may cause imbalances or compete with absorption of others. But I do take a simple multivitamin that has conservative amounts of nutrients that may be lacking in a plant-based diet, even though I'm not 100% plant-based. I just prefer a cautious approach. I don't want any deficiencies. So this supplement has a little bit of iodine. It's got enough B12. It's got a little bit of K2, a little extra vitamin D, just conservative amounts to cover my bases. So anyway, um, so moving on from that, there was one study that a condition, and this was what it was about. It was conducted in a population with borderline hypothyroidism. They were given 30 grams of soy protein powder, and the results showed that a small number, 6 out of 60, in the high isoflavin group demonstrated a mild worsening of thyroid function. However, it did not examine the effects of consuming whole soy as edamame or tempeh in its natural state, but it used this isolated soy protein powder, which may have different effects. So no clear conclusions can be made there. But for those in that study, other health parameters actually improved with the higher isoflavin containing soy powder, including insulin resistance improvement, blood pressure, C-reactive protein levels. So these results suggest that soy phytoestrogens can have cardiovascular benefits, but for a small subset of people with already compromised thyroid function, excessive soy products may exacerbate the condition. So for me at this point, eating unprocessed or minimally processed soy products such as edamame or tofu, not isolated soy protein like in processed soy burgers and sausages. I think that for me is appropriate as part of a healthy diet, and I think it's beneficial for me. Yeah, so I don't believe there's reason to fear soybeans in the context of a healthful diet with variety and adequate iodine exposure. So, and then I just wanted to mention one other thing with soy with regards to breast cancer. This is very interesting. This is what actually swayed my view, my bias. I read the work of a prominent breast cancer surgeon, and she was writing a book about breast cancer. And she sat down to tackle the topic of soy, and she was all pumped up to tell everyone must avoid it, just like she'd always told her patients. And this is, I'll quote her here. She says, "This is another area where I dove into the science while writing my book. I'd been planning to tell people to avoid soy, but it turns out that soy is absolutely anti-estrogenic and anti-carcinogenic." She says, "I go over the studies in my book, But basically, since 2009, every single study in humans as it pertains to soy shows a dramatic reduction in breast cancer occurrence, in breast cancer recurrence, and death. Consuming soy leads to around a 60% reduction in getting breast cancer, and for estrogen-driven breast cancer patients, a 60% reduction in recurrence risk and 29% reduction in mortality. So that was her study, her take on the studies. And she said there are huge studies following thousands of women for years. And the largest study to date found a dramatic decrease from just half a serving of soy a week. Her words, I encourage women to consume soy, and it doesn't even have to be that much, but I advocate for 2 to 3 servings daily. So that I found very interesting. So now my brain's thinking, well, how the heck can that work? So I went to my daughter, who's a doctor in nutritional research, and I asked her if she could explain what's the mechanism behind this, because I wanted to know, like, how then does this work? And so she explained this to me. It's a little bit sciencey, but she says there are different types of estrogen receptors in the human body. The two main estrogen receptors are ER alpha and ER beta. ER beta has tumor suppressive effects when stimulated, and this can counteract the stimulatory and proliferative effects of ER alpha stimulation. I'm not really understanding this 100%, but it's the mechanism behind this, what I'm sharing about breast cancer. So essentially, she says, when estrogen binds to ER alpha, it results in the growth of cancer cells. When estrogen binds to ER beta, it results in the opposite effect. And plant estrogens, phytoestrogens, preferentially bind to ER beta in breast tissue, which would explain the protective effect of soy. That's the science behind it. I don't understand it completely, but I see exactly what she's saying there, and why phytoestrogens operate differently in the body. Okay, I'm done with soy. That's something where everyone must make their own choice. Obviously, we want organic, non-GMO soy. Not always easy to find with the soy milk at Woolies. They used to have it, and now they've changed it, so I'm on their case. But I love soy. It helps me hit my protein targets. I find it super yummy. My thyroid is healthy. I do get sufficient iodine, so I'm not too concerned. But let's get back to CalciAIM. That was totally off track, but I just wanted to explain that. So each to their own. No expert here, not telling you what to do, being open about what I do. Okay, so with CalciAIM, Phil explained to me, I sent him a few questions. So the tolerable upper intake for calcium is 2,000 to 2,500 milligrams a day. And so one can see that CalciAIM's lower balanced serving size with the supportive ingredients make it a very safe and effective calcium supplement for long-term use. Other than helping our bones, one other thing about CalciAIM is, although it's this acidic drink, when you drink it, it actually has an alkalizing effect on the body. And that's because of its rich mineral profile, the potassium, the magnesium, the calcium. And these all help to counteract acidity in the body. Um, Based on, I don't know if you know about PREL, the potential renal acid load. It's a scale which measures whether a food or a product is acidifying or alkalizing on the body. And according to that scale, CalciAIM is the most alkalizing product in the entire AIM range, even more alkalizing than Barley Life. So not only is CalciAIM strengthening your bones and your frame to help you prevent fractures, but it's also supporting your long-term health through pH balance, a key factor in aging well. So the bottom line then with CalciAIM is that it's more than a supplement. It is scientifically designed. It is a highly absorbable nutritional tool that delivers what your body needs in the form ionic calcium that it can actually use. I'm done. I'm sorry I took so long with a whole lot of detours along the way. But in conclusion, I hope that your takeaways are this: muscle matters. What grows together, muscles and bone, grow together in tandem. Another takeaway: test, don't guess when it comes to your health. And very importantly, find your why that will keep you motivated to look after your health. And then, if you need to lose weight, do it wisely with moderate caloric restriction. Make sure that it's an environment of micronutrient excellence with comprehensive nutritional adequacy, meeting those protein needs, meeting those calcium needs, and don't neglect resistance training. Thank you. I hope that you have learned something, and I'll see you next time. I'm not sure when exactly that will be, but then I will go more into protein and anti-inflammatory nutrition. So thank you. Have a lovely day or evening, wherever you are. Bye bye.